anytime anybody moves, they have stuff. There's just stuff that you have to get from one place to another. I want you to talk us through what it was like with your move with the stuff.
I think I probably overcomplicate it. Our garage just was like a sea of stuff because I just could not handle it. It was too overwhelming.
My experience with you is a sea of things is pretty normal. From my perspective, which is not a judgment. It's just, I like that term, like sea of things, because it feels like there's probably some reason that the kelp is next to the clownfish or something. So it's like just an environment I'm not familiar with.
I'm the current that is moving things about in the sea. Oh. So I'm taking things from one place to another and forgetting along the road that I've done. I did this last night, Michelle. This just flapped in. A wave of new subscribers has hit our channel this past week. Amy from Awkward Anthems has sent a flood of amazing people our way. People like Joel the Architect or Nick Pickle 1079. Such great names. But we couldn't be more thrilled to welcome each and every one of you. For those of you who don't know who Amy is, she is an incredible visual artist who merges motion graphics with musical comedy. Think of her as a socially awkward woman in search of her Weird Al-inspired dreams. We hope those dreams come true, Amy. We hope they do. You can check her out on her YouTube page in our link description. In an important correction, we need to address an error from last week. During a moment of ADHD, I incorrectly named the book we'll be focusing on in our upcoming series. But don't worry, Michelle knew best. Next week, we will continue our deep dive into ADHD symptoms as detailed in the book Driven to Distraction. Stay tuned for this vital information. But for today, we're going to finish up the Google searches of, do I have ADHD? Thank you once again for your incredible support. Now back to you, Michelle.
Hello, Megan.
Hello, Michelle.
Welcome to Sisters.
Sisters.
There were never such devoted
sisters.
Hey there, honey. Good to see you.
You too.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you.
Man, always happy to be here with you too.
We are going to get started talking about your neurospicy, neurofabulous, neuroscrumptious.
Oh,
brain.
Scrumptious.
And we've been really focusing on ADHD,
Yep.
attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Yeah.
And we like to say also hyperactivity distinction sometimes because we think it's fabulous as well as sometimes difficult.
I am distinct more than I am disordered.
I like it. I'm going to go with absolutely. Yeah, we have to figure out, well, no, I mean.
It could also just be someone's perception too. Like, no, that's just disorder, girl.
So today we usually bring up some sort of a topic. We then dig into that brain of yours a little bit, figure out what might be going on. And then we look at sometimes strategies that you have or things that you're struggling with that you need some strategies from our community. And then we'd like to shout out to our community and find out what else they're finding is helpful or contributing to that conversation. So today, I want us to think about your move. You moved from Arizona, right, to California. And anytime anybody moves, they have stuff. There's just stuff that you have to get from one place to another, right? You have to get yourself, you have to get your husband or wife, kids, pets, and then all of your household things, right? Every little thing, right? I want you to talk us through what it was like with your move with the stuff, this last one. How did that start for you back at the old house? What happened once you got here to your new place?
This time around, I started to purge before we left. Because I knew we'd be coming to a smaller footprint of a space. That was really hard. Oh my gosh, letting go of stuff. Like, maybe I could use this. Like, why are we getting rid of this perfectly good bookcase? Megan, we don't have use for it. But we might. Like, that was really difficult to get over that. But Brian, as you might have remembered, we came over to your house the day that we found out that we were moving. And we had already been kind of trying to purge our house anyways. But like, we really needed to kick it into gear. And I was just like, I mean, what are we supposed to do with it? We have all this extra stuff. And then Brian just says, to the street. We all started laughing because it's like, it's so true.
Yeah.
Just put it to the street. Because I think that we had Brush and Bulky coming and people would come by and pick stuff up. And so it was going to go to a good home anyways. So that was the first start of it. Mm-hmm. And then the second one is sort of like sheer panic in the beginning because I can see how much stuff we have, right? I can tell how much stuff it is and how long it's going to take. Where I think a lot of people, from what I understand, and I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they don't realize just how much belongings they've accumulated until they're actually in the middle of boxing them. And they're like, wow, this is taking a lot longer than I would have expected. And I'm like, duh. I mean, it was obvious that there was a lot of stuff there. So I think that starts me off. I think the thing that I'm really good at is coming up with systems, sort of figuring out what's going to be the best system for moving. I think I gamify it. I come up with like this really elaborate idea of how, and it keeps me entertained, keeps my brain entertained, you know, and then I probably overcomplicate it, but to me it just works. So I create all these systems.
And do you feel like those systems are effective? Do you get to completion on those things? Is it just, and it gets you good enough? You know what? I don't know if I'm asking the right question. But.
No, yeah, I'm thinking about the completion part because I'm laughing at myself because no, I don't ever get to anything complete. I think that's just the curse of the ADHD brain. But it does seem like I am more prepared than normal people. When I talk to like the movers and stuff, they're like, oh, you're so far along. So I think it probably is advantageous for me and for Brian. Well, I just find that like if you can do a little bit here and there for like a few months, it's so much easier than having to figure it all out the week before. Like that would just stress the heck out of me.
Yeah, and I'm completely the opposite. Like I would need all of my stuff to stay in place until I was ready for it to all move.
This is actually interesting. Because let's dig into your brain, Michelle.
Okay, let's do it.
In my mind, I'm saying this out loud to you and I'm thinking to myself, that's weird because like I procrastinate on everything else, but I don't procrastinate on this. And if anything, I'm sustaining this daily thing, which I was thinking that's oxymoronic to me. Is that the right word? Oxymoronic? I don't know. It's not a word, is it?
I like it. I don't know. Oxymoron is what I've heard, but I like oxymoronic as a we should add it in if it's not.
A verb it?
Yeah.
We've been talking all these symptoms of ADHD. Yeah. And so sustaining something seems crazy. But then if I'm sustaining working on my home for 3 months as we get going, but then what you're saying is that you're procrastinating to the very end.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I think it's just, you know, when you have kids, I don't want all my stuff everywhere. So I don't know if that's procrastinating or just I'm going to kill somebody and probably saving me from jail because it would be too much. I like to get things done in a shorter time frame, but I could see that we've talked a lot about energy and how much energy you have. That would make sense to me that moving needs to be kind of broken up into these little chunks that you can do, right?
That makes sense. Okay, so maybe it's not procrastination.
But also I think like it's sort of interesting when you're moving.
Yeah.
Right? Like you haven't touched all your stuff recently necessarily. Like it would be interesting probably for your brain to like look at things. I don't know. Check them out again. Do you have a catalog? Oh, you do have a catalog in your brain. Now, I don't know if everyone does. That's ADHD, but for you catalog every single thing that's in your house.
Yeah.
You pretty much know what's in there, right? You don't forget it.
There's very few things nowadays that I don't know is in my house. It's rare. When Brian and we combined our two households, you know, that was really hard for me because I didn't know what he was bringing into it. And I got so overwhelmed when his stuff got brought in.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it short-circuited me. I mean, we had you can ask him, like our garage just was like a sea of stuff because I just could not handle it. It was too overwhelming. So then nothing ever got done for a long time. It took a long, long time to work through all that.
Okay, so I want to dig into that if we can for just a minute, because my experience with you, a sea of things is pretty normal from my perspective. Like when I walk in, there will be a sea of things about sometimes, like in your house or was at one point, which is not a judgment. It's just that's like what I'm observing when I come in. And I like that term, like sea of things, because it feels like there's probably some reason that the kelp is next to the clownfish or something, but like I don't know what it is, right? So it's like just an environment I'm not familiar with when I walk in.
Well, I mean, I'm the current that is moving things about in the sea. Oh. So I'm taking things from one place to another and forgetting along the road that I've done. I did this last night, Michelle. So I was trying to. It's so ridiculous. I was trying to measure our window in our living room because we need a blackout curtain because it's really hard to see the TV. Okay. So we're going to get a curtain rod. And so I was measuring it. So I was like, okay, I got to go get a tape measure. So I went to get the tape measure. And then I walked into the kitchen realizing like, oh, you know what? I need to put the food away that I just made. So I put the tape measure down and I put the food away. I go back to the chair, like to where I'm going to sit. And then I was like, oh, I need my water. I forgot that too. So I went and found my water and I go back to sit down. And then I was like, wait, what was I doing? And I was like, oh, right. Where's the tape measure? That was the whole reason I went into the kitchen. And sure enough, it's like right there in the corner next to the stove.
Oh my gosh. You know, I thought you were going to tell me it was in the refrigerator.
No.
That would be like me. I'd be like, oh, wait, where did I put that? That's so funny. I did find my keys in the refrigerator once.
Really?
I was so tired. Yeah, Josh was a baby. I was so tired. I had carried him in from the car and I had my keys and I had his bottle and I put the bottle and my keys in the fridge. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I almost kind of wonder if mother's baby brain is kind of similar to ADHD. Like it's a little temporary ADHD.
Yeah, because you have no executive functioning ability. You're so exhausted all the time. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Aww.
I think it's so great to like find these ways that people can connect and empathize with me. You know, because that was the thing I realized with having chronic pain. It wasn't until Brian got chronic pain that he was like, oh, I understand you on a whole new level. And like, it just sort of mellowed both of us out as far as our relationship anyways. And so I just think that was such an powerful experience for me that like any way we can find to say, hey, this time period in your life, like, yes, you don't have ADHD, but this time period in your life is sort of simulating what ADHD is on a regular basis. I think that's a pretty powerful tool that we can start coming up with.
I love that. Yeah. And I like what you had said from just a bit ago about you being the current. And I think that's so interesting because one of the things that was stated is that people having difficulty with organizing their belongings or organizing their things. And I'm wondering, is that true? Because I think you're actually very organized with your things, but the idea of you being the current that moves that organization from place to place and maybe forgets to put it back doesn't mean you're disorganized really, but just means that
I look disorganized.
Yeah. Or that it can become disorganized.
Yeah.
Right? That it can quickly become disorganized, but you had a system. Like I think you were saying, you always have a system. And I'm remembering back, you'll spend weeks, if not months, thinking about the organizational systems oftentimes.
I will. And I think that's the challenge with life is that life isn't stagnant. You know, it's not stationary. So one system can work for a while and then your life changes and then all of a sudden that system doesn't work anymore. And I'm thinking about, I have this Pelican case, which is like a really kind of industrial waterproof case that I put all of my technology in, like my camera and all that kind of stuff. Well, we needed a box. Like I have a very specific, backtrack. Let me answer the question that I already said in my head. I had made this like very specific system and all of the like cubbies and everything you needed for the technology that I had. When we went to Utah for our trip, I needed that box, but I needed it for something totally different. In my haste, I took out everything out of that box and I put it on Brian's desk because I was like, I just need to get this out. We have to just get stuff. And then now it's currently on the bed behind me because I haven't figured out where to put it now. Because the stuff that's in the Pelican box, I haven't unpacked that one yet. Because I got through like 3 of the bags, but not all of them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's there, but I feel like I have so many things to do in a day, and then getting enough energy to actually excite myself to get up and do it, like that dopamine, finding a way to get a dopamine hit in the morning. That's, I think, the challenge for me.
Interesting. So yeah, because I was really thinking about, it's not so much you don't have a system for organization, but that sticking with the system or being able to bring it back in is
Or to
really
see it.
to see it. And
I see it right now because we're talking about it, but it's really easy for my brain to just completely erase it out of my memory or erase it out of my vision. Whereas I know it's there. And so it's almost like, because I know it's there, it's like, okay, I know where it is. I know where it belongs right now. And so I can put it aside. I don't have to put my energy towards that. And then when I need it, I'll know where it is, which is why if someone moves it, it's a problem because I don't know where it's been moved to.
so does that relate to like incorporating Brian's stuff into your stuff somehow? Back in the day when you guys first did that? I'm just thinking of anyone else who's partnering with somebody who's ADHD. It can seem like a bomb went off, right? To some degree, right? Because it's just...
Oh, yeah. He was very organized and fastidious in his organizations. And I just came in and like destroyed his house, basically. And that was, I mean, it wasn't like a huge contention point, but I know it was hard for him.
Yeah.
And bless his soul for being able to work through me with it. I think I somehow took it on myself that I was supposed to be the homemaker or like fix the home or, you know, and also because he and I spoke in different ways, like I spoke in images and he spoke in grammar. You have to have a lot of communication when you're trying to incorporate 2 different sets of things, right? So like if you've got 2 sets of knives and you're trying to decide which one are you going to keep. Well, if you can't even talk on a basic fundamental level very well, it's going to be hard to negotiate which one stays and which one goes.
Right.
So I think that a huge part of that is like trying to figure out first, like, how do you guys communicate together? And if that's not an issue, then okay, you're just going to have to hopefully have someone who's going to be able to say, hey, look, I know this is an issue right now, but here's what I need. Here's what I need for success. And Brian does do that. He'll stage manage me. Like I'll say, babe, stage manage me, which in the theater, a stage manager is the person who is, I would say I mean, I'm sorry for all you stage managers. I love you because you're so much more, but like you're sort of the babysitter for everybody. You know, you're babysitting the actors and then you're telling all the tech people what to do. So you're like this badass babysitter who has to keep us all crazy people in line.
Well, it's like having an entire brain stage. If the stage is the brain, then they're the executive functioning frontal cortex, making sure everything goes right. And we've just said
the most important thing that you need
well,
in
we've
theater.
also said like a big percentage probably of actors have ADHD, right? Or potentially could, you know.
That's
so
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Creative people tend to have it more commonly than others. Yeah.
Yeah. So they are the executive function of a theater. So like I would tell Brian, like, hey, stage manage me, because in the beginning it was hard. We would try to work on stuff together and then I would freak out because, you know, I would just get so overwhelmed and he wouldn't know how to handle it. So he's like, well, just you deal with it or bring your sister because she seems to be able to help you. And so over time it's been like, no, we have to figure this out together because it's not going to get anywhere by us not working together to do it. And I think once he and I had started learning how to communicate better, that was when things really started to shift. And it wasn't even like, you know, we had gone to see a family therapist and worked through a lot of that kind of stuff, but it actually was working on this project that he really wanted me to work on. This group of people, they like love this show called One Piece and they try to edit it. So I was really good at editing and he's like, hey, will you work on this with me? And so because it was something that he was invested in, he had to learn how to communicate with me and I had to learn how to tell him how to communicate with me. And we had to work together in order to make this product. And I think that was such a huge lesson for me. It's like you have to figure out how to tell somebody what works for you and what doesn't.
So do you sort of see the things, the stuff in your house, the organization of that as sort of a symptom?
Yes.
as opposed to like it's the problem. It's more just like it gives you kind of a gauge of how well you two are communicating or how well you're navigating through life. Or
I don't know if it's necessarily how well I'm navigating, but it definitely is it's a physical manifestation of what's going on in my head. The reason why I said it's a current is that I actually can visually see all of the movements that I had to do to make those specific items appear. You know, like if you ever see like time lapses when you see the people kind of walking back, I can visually see all of the different things I've been doing, and I see that current occurring. And I look at something, I'm like, oh yeah, like I see movement when I'm looking at some of these items, like, oh yeah, that's right, I did that. And then it just flashes out of my head again.
so what might be some of the strategies? Because obviously to an extent, it's not so much that you're keeping your house completely tidy or something, right? But on some level, when you're living with other people, and maybe just for yourself too, like you need to be able to find things. Maybe you could find them, but Brian wouldn't be able to find them, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's hard when you're living with somebody. So what might be some of the strategies that you have found help you reset maybe, or I don't know.
Well,
I don't even know what the right term is. Like, is it that you're resetting to the structure you put together? Is it that you're
I think it's again the communication part. So like when we first got here, we had all of this stuff, and I did something different this time because like the first move we had, Brian's like, let's just unbox everything and then we'll unbox it all and then we'll figure out where it goes. And I was like, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. But then he's like, no, I think it's going to really work. And so I was like trying to be the good, new spouse. And so like we just unpacked everything and put it all out on the table. And I was just like so overwhelmed for months. And I afterwards, we joke about it, but I was like, so the next time we move, what are we going to do different? So this time, though, what I said was like, okay, we're going to unbox one box at a time. And we're going to do it together so that each box, we are making a decision where it's going to go. And even if it's not the space that it ends up being, we're just going to make a decision right now. So it's going to go into that spot. That's where it's going to go. So we both know. And then if we need to change it, we can make that change together and we can troubleshoot it together. And that was such a huge shift for both of us. I had to keep reminding him, I'm like, babe, your brain is just as brilliant as mine. It's just it's a different type of brilliant. And when we bring our two brains together, we create this really amazing, synergy. See, he sees things on a macro level that I don't see, and I see things on a micro level. So it's really important for him to provide his point of view because it helps in the areas that I'm deficient in. And so I just kept saying like, I don't like how this is ending up. What do you think we could do? And so then we just had to start kind of troubleshooting like, okay, well, do we want it here? Do we want it there? Or we get stuff like in the right location. And I'm like, look, I will do the micro part when you're gone. And then we're going to come back and look at it when you get home. And then we'll see where we're at. But even then I was still like, make him sit in the kitchen while I was organizing the pantry. Cause I was like, this is stupid. I don't want to do this. So you're going to sit with me because I don't want to do it either. Like, well, I just need someone to body a mirror with
like
me.
It sounds to me like there's like really three things. It's like you limited how much there was by purging. Yeah. You took it in small chunks so that you didn't get visually and not overstimulated by all the things.
Yeah.
And the body mirroring piece. Like, I need someone here to sit here with me while I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this together. And so that helps obviously any partner too to know. I mean, we just moved 2 years ago and still Josh and mom are like, wait, where's the this or that? That's hard too, right? Because I know where everything is, but they don't. So I think that's just like a good, whoever in your community needs to know where things are, right?
Yeah. And because I'm not very good with the auditory, there are times like if I move something now, I will say, Brian, you need to come with me real quickly. And I walk him over to where it is. Cause I'm like, okay, now this is where I moved this to so that he knows where stuff goes back or where he can find it. Cause like, God forbid something happens to me. The man's going to be like, where is everything? And I don't know if this is like a female thing, if it's an ADHD thing. I'm not sure like what part of this is it, but it feels like for so long it was on me to make it happen. And I took that on. It wasn't him putting that on me. Like that was me. And I had to work through my own stuff on that. But
I think that's a huge issue, especially for women with ADHD, from everything I've been reading and listening to you talk about it, is that this idea of the homemaker and all the things that are expected of us as females oftentimes, you know, in terms of culturally, right? Like what society expects us to do and be able to do well. Like just making dinner, right? The amount of executive functioning. That's why I was asking about the move, the amount of executive functioning tasks that you have to do and keep track of. And I remember when you guys were moving that you had this amazing system and it was working really well until the very end. And then the last thing that really didn't get your attention were your tools.
Yeah,
and
that was sad.
You love your tools, you love building things, and they just got thrown into this heap. And when they got moved, they got kind of damp as well. And so I remember coming to your house when we were putting them back together because, you know, my little anal brain is like, oh, let me put everything up on a pegboard for you.
Yeah.
But they were rusted, some of them, or had rust on them. And so it was like, had to go in and clean them and all of that. But I remember like this great system you had, but the moving people were not in on the system.
No,
and
they were not.
It was difficult to articulate that. And obviously it was nice to have movers. So God love everybody who's a mover because wow. So then when somebody doesn't understand your system, I think then it's very difficult for you to push past that. Like you don't want to touch it after that is what I've seen. It's like hard for you to start engaging with it when something's boxed in a way that doesn't make sense to you.
Yeah, I mean that was really sad because like the last set of movers that we had, because we, you know, the military moves us, the last set of movers said they won't box any of our tools. So I didn't even think about setting them aside or doing anything with them. So I'm like, well, they're not going to move them anyways. And then all of a sudden they said, yeah, we can move them. And there were a lot of things like that just some movers do it, some movers don't. And so I didn't make that a priority, but I tend to make other people a priority. And I've had to work on that since I moved here. I'm really trying to focus on getting myself organized, getting me situated so that I can be at my best, put my oxygen mask on first so I can put everyone else's on if they need it. But also I'm realizing like Brian's a grown man. He can totally put his own oxygen mask on. It's fine. You know, like Megan, stop it. Like he doesn't need that kind of help or support. He needs support in other ways.
That's hard for me too. So I get that when you feel that sort of part of your role or part of what brings value.
Yeah.
That you're valuable just enough, just as you are. You don't have to do all these things for other people in that way is interesting. I'm curious if our community has other things that have helped them with things and organizing things, because I do think this is a problem. I think most people have issues around this. And I remember I was as big a current in my room as a teenager as we were talking about with you. And I remember having just pile upon pile of thing. And there's a picture of me getting ready for college with a friend, and we're sitting on my bed, but it looks like our feet are on a box or something, right? Like they're up high off the bed, and that we're sitting there somehow. And then you look and it's just this sea of clothes and sea of stuff. And so I don't think I was taught, I know I wasn't really taught any organizational skills. And that's so powerful when you've learned those, especially when you learn them at a young age. And I think that even if you aren't necessarily ADHD, but you're with others who have it or are brought up by people who have it, then there's these things that everyone else seems to know how to do that you don't know.
Yeah.
I always knew there was a place for the silverware. We knew where the cups and the bowls and the plates and all that stuff went. It wasn't like our entire house wasn't orderly, but my own personal belongings, there wasn't a sense of, oh, you know, put it in a box. For me, it didn't come naturally.
I mean, it must come naturally for some people because we have organizational gurus now.
Well, I just remember one of our really good friends who listens to this podcast, Heather, I hired her to come over to organize my apartment, my very first apartment, because I was like,
really?
I have no idea. Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. I just I didn't know how to keep a home. And she came over and she showed me. And then when she showed me once, I could kind of take that and then do it for myself over time. But I mean, when I first started teaching, we had these carts we would cart around our stuff, but every teacher had to change rooms, and we were science teachers, so it was crazy. I taught chemistry in 2 different rooms within one day. It was nuts.
It's nuts.
So I was taking this little cart of things around, and by the end of the day, my cart would just look like a bomb had exploded because the kids would pull things off and put things on and whatever. And I looked over at my department head, and it took me like 2 years. But I looked, I'm like, God, her cart is always immaculate. Like, what is happening? And I finally realized it, and I think you learned this in the theater, but there was a place for everything. She had a thing for her markers, whiteboard markers or scissors or whatever it was, and there was like a hole. She had made a piece of wood with 30 little holes in it, and then the kids put the scissors back in whatever it was that she needed. She had an organizational system for it. So I think this is a common problem for a lot of people.
I try to do that. Like, I know what I need to do in my house. It's just that, like last night, I'm working on it, and then all of a sudden I leave my tape measure in the kitchen.
Right.
I can actually visualize like how everything would look, and then I get stopped or I get stuck by emotional stuff, like emotional things. I get stuck with the sheer amount of stuff sometimes. It's challenging. Like I've been listening to these ladies on YouTube. The philosophy is like, okay, as you're working through, like Marie Kondo says, just pull everything out so you can see it all, right? And actually, that is the worst thing for me to do, because I will pull it all out, I will see it all, and then I will just shut down because I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah.
So what their philosophy is like, as you're cleaning, like let's say something's out of place, right? If it's out of place, then you take it to its correct place right away.
So you don't forget.
And so you don't forget. Exactly. And I'm probably butchering how they say this, but even if you get stopped right in the middle of doing cleanup, you haven't left it any worse than it started.
Right.
If anything, you've made it a little bit better. And like, if you can make it a little bit better each day, it eventually will get better. And I had never really thought about that before. And I was like, it's actually been really helpful, because I've been doing things slowly and little by little. And it just every day gets a little bit better, a little bit better. But I see it in my head. Like, I know exactly what I want to do. And if I had like a whole crew of minions, I'd be like, do this. But I don't have that. So I'm just stuck in my house.
You just bring me out every once in a while to do.
Come on, minion.
Yeah, get over here. It's true, though. I think that it's important to acknowledge what our limitations are, but also to be looking for solutions that work within who we are.
Yeah.
And not be so set on it has to get done in this way.
Yeah.
And so I really like what you're saying about that. That would drive me absolutely insane. It wouldn't be easy for me to do it that way. Actually, it would be much harder. It's sort of like the tomato timer. Like, you can do this thing that I can't do.
Yeah.
Or I can do it, but it's not easy for me. And so I think it's like leaning into whatever those things that make it easier for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
That. Well, thank you for talking with me about all your stuff.
Thanks for listening about all my stuff.
We'd love to invite our community to talk to us as well about your stuff, how you're dealing with it, if there's some things, issues around it, or some things that you found that work. And Megan will go ahead and put on some of those links to things that she's been listening to that have been helpful to her.
Yeah, I will put in the description. There's some good people online who have ideas, so I like them.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I love you.
I love you too.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Sisters. This series has us focusing more specifically on ADHD and all of its symptoms. If you enjoyed this episode as much as Michelle and I enjoy laughing with each other, please share it with someone you think would benefit from this conversation. Make sure to follow us on whatever platform you're currently listening to so that you can get notified each week. Now, next week, we'll be talking about the sense of underachievement, where people tend to say they can't get their act together. Now, this has been a reoccurring theme in my life, and my therapist has made very good money because of it. So hopefully we can start talking more about this and shed some light on it. But until then, here's to a great end of the week, and remember, stay curious. Okay. Russia.
Are you ready?
Okay. I am ready. Bring it on. Okay, get yourself zen.
Okay.
Bring it on.